What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode here on CNR TV. On this episode, it has been a while. On this episode, we are starting back with Moon Knight, episode 1. It's been a while since we've been here. Josh is a new pop. His little man was born. What's his name?
Shepherd.
So Shepherd is going to be joining us on the next episode. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, guys. We're going to do like we've always done on this show, where we watch the recap together, and then we will come back at the end of it and we will share our thoughts on it. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the recap, okay?
Oscar Isaac is burning the candle at both ends in Moon Knight. And not just because his character, Mark Spector, has dissociative identity disorder. He serves multiple narrative purposes in the Disney Plus series that also introduces us to a new Marvel hero. As Mark Spector, Isaac gets to be the badass mercenary and superhero Moon Knight. But as Stephen Grant, one of Mark's alternate personalities, Isaac gets to be the audience surrogate. He is our entry into this new chapter in the MCU that has very little connective tissue to anything even remotely Avengery. Judging by the first episode, Moon Knight is not the profane romp that comic book readers may have anticipated from the mercenary who serves a moon god. Our day in the life of Stephen Grant starts with him cheerfully chirping at his neighbors.
Hey mate, still selling the old brushes and brooms, right?
Before heading off to work at the National Gallery in London's Trafalgar Square. His boss, Donna, insults everything about him, from his knowledge of Egyptian mythology to his flirting skills. Something is off, however. Another co-worker, Dylan, asks if they are still on for their date Friday, but he doesn't remember asking her out. The uneasy feeling only grows when, despite a meticulous nighttime routine, he wakes up in Germany. It's not difficult to see why Stephen thinks he's dreaming. He's surrounded by poppies, his jaw is broken, a gold scarab is in his pocket, and people are shooting at him. The cold open introduces us to Arthur in the middle of a self-flagellation ritual that ended with him putting glass shards in his sandals. Arthur performs a ritual to their goddess, Ahmet, and then kills one of his followers on the spot. Arthur's guards inform him that they've been ambushed and lost the scarab, which leads him to discover Stephen in the crowd, who he believes to be the mercenary. Stephen doesn't want trouble and tries to give the scarab to Arthur, but his body resists. Someone else seems to take control. Stephen blacks out and wakes up covered in blood, seemingly having killed the guards. Eventually, Stephen disassociates from the chase entirely. He wakes up in bed, safe in his ankle restraints. While the tape on the door is undisturbed, his fish now has 2 fins, and he's 2 days late for his date. He's been asleep for 3 days. Back at his flat, he pokes around and finds a secret compartment with the key to a storage unit and a flip phone, with missed calls from a woman named Layla. She calls again, and when Stephen answers, Layla claims that she has been trying to reach him for months. She also calls him Mark, and claims to recognize Stephen's voice, but not the accent. Speaking of the accent, it's at this moment that a voice speaks to Stephen.
Stephen.
This, as far as we know, is Mark Spector. Mark warns Stephen to stop before he gets himself in trouble. The lights start flickering. An intimidating figure who looks like he's wearing a Sleep No More mask chases Stephen down the hall. Comic readers know that this is Khonshu, the Egyptian god of the moon. Once again, he blacks out and wakes up somewhere else. this time on the bus outside of Tottenham Court Road Station, and once again pursued by Arthur Darrow. Stephen makes it to the museum, but Arthur is right behind him, and is allowed in by the various followers on the museum staff. Arthur explains that he's only trying to use the Justice of Ahmet to rid the world of past, present, and future evil by any means possible. As Stephen could probably tell you, Ahmet was an Egyptian deity known as the Devourer of the Dead. Arthur uses his cane to judge Stephen, but Ahmet does not give a definitive reading.
There's chaos in you.
Stephen tried to go back to work, but the lights go out, and Stephen is attacked by wolves that resemble Egyptian jackals. Arthur demands over the museum's PA system that Stephen give him the scarab. He finds refuge in the bathroom and sees Mark Spector clearly in the mirror on either side of him for the first time. Stephen freezes while Mark paces back and forth, reflecting an infinite number of times behind him. Mark calmly and coolly tells Stephen that this is real, this is happening, and to give him control so he can get them out of there safely. Stephen relinquishes control to Mark, who then summons a white suit of armor that materializes around his body, shoulders first, like he's getting strapped into a roller coaster.
Well, there you have it. Episode 1 of Moon Knight.
So good, so good.
So, first off, let's lead with, based off of the Disney Plus shows that we've seen thus far, where would you rate this as the first episode?
Comparing first episode to first episode of every season or every show, I would say this is number 1 so far.
I agree. One of the things that that stood out to me is a different approach to the superhero film. This is the first time we've seen a character that initially presents as weak and timid, and more. It almost seems like he would be the character that would be the comic relief of the show.
Right.
But he really is ultimately the hero of the film.
Well, he is and he isn't. I mean,
Well, true.
kind of
As
thing
Stephen Grant, he is not.
Right.
As Mark Spector, he is.
Right. Now, here's my question. Who is the original personality? Has he always had this condition? I'm suspecting no. And I think we'll find that out quickly. But just a thought, like, I think Mark Spector might be the main character, for lack of a better word.
Or main personality.
Right. And then perhaps when he got the Moon Knight powers, it created a sub-personality.
Yeah, and, based on what Layla said when he finally talked to her on the phone, and based on a lot of other things that, like anything where it's, required him to have any kind of backbone or charisma that's happened, Stevens had nothing to do with that.
Right.
So
exactly.
what you have is, and I think, of course, we're going to find out more about the Mark Spector side of the character, but I think what Mark Spector is doing is using Stephen Grant as like a secret identity to hide.
I think it's intentional.
Yeah, I think it's intentional because, anytime, from what I've gathered, anytime something exciting has happened, Stevens had nothing to do with it.
Right.
From asking the Dylan out from the, to, fighting and getting the scarab in Germany.
Yeah, that's interesting. interesting because a lot is happening when Mark is in control.
And Steven has no recollection. He knew something was up because he was waking up every day tired, and
he also said the comment that he felt like he's been hit by a bus every time he wakes up.
Right.
Because Mark's out there fighting and kicking ass.
Yeah, fighting supernatural creatures.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I wanted to bring up was the bad guy, Ethan Hawke's character, Arthur Darrow or Barrow. And I did a little bit of research. I'm going to be completely honest with you on this character. I didn't really know who Moon Knight was coming into this.
I know very, very little.
And so that required me to do more research because I wanted to have some kind of knowledge on the character.
Yeah.
And Arthur's character in the comic books was a really nefarious individual. He was a doctor who worked for the Nazis
In Auschwitz. Yeah.
So, and he was into the occult and all that stuff, which kind of loosely ties into what he's doing now. I don't know if that's the direction they're going to take that character, or that's going to be the history of the character.
It seems like they're really branching out from his comic book stuff. But his comic book characters also very little happens. Like, I think that's his one and only appearance.
I did read an article that said that they were surprised that he was one of the bad guys in the series because his participation in the past has been very minuscule, where he really hasn't, he wasn't a very broad character.
Well, that's kind of perfect for the MCU, honestly. They've changed so many characters, and they've changed big characters, so
that's true.
It makes sense just to have a little nobody that you can turn into whoever you want.
That is true. So this is falling in line with the Disney Plus take and MCU take on these characters. Because I guess you could go and nitpick all the little aspects of everything we've seen so far.
Sure.
If you're either a hardcore comic book fan or you're, like me, where I enjoy it all, but most of my exposure to Marvel has been through the MCU.
Yeah.
So
I've done a lot of research on the comics, but I've never been one to purchase comics or anything. So I know a lot about it through other means.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm kind of jumping a little further ahead here. I've always been surprised when they introduce the bad guys, for lack of a better word, at how embedded these groups are into everyday society.
Yeah.
And this one is ridiculous. I mean, like, everybody on that bus scene, every person on there apparently, or they made you feel like, was part of this cult, this Ahmet cult.
Also, all the guards in the museum. It's
right, like they're weaved into every single aspect of daily life.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of my complaints with the MCU is a lot of stuff feels like this big threat, and it's always been there, and you're just supposed to accept it. But them being like a cult with this Egyptian thing that is so hidden from the public, it actually makes it feel bigger than it is.
That's true.
Like, it feels like it could have always been.
It kind of lends back to, and I can't remember what they were called in Falcon and Winter Soldier, the group.
The One Nation thing.
Yeah. I hope that what was it?
Flag Smashers.
Yeah, the Flag Smashers. So I hope they don't do the same thing that they did with the Flag Smashers, where they build it all up and then at the end they were nothing. They were no threat,
Right.
And but moving a little further ahead, I want to approach this. There's the scene where Arthur and Stephen are inside the museum closer to the end of the show, and he judges Stephen, right, with his cane and the whole thing, and he doesn't get a definitive answer from Ahmet,
Right.
like on the scales on his arm. He makes a statement that I think a lot of people might have missed, and I want your take on this. He says, I sense, or there's a lot of chaos in you.
Yeah.
Okay, with that word chaos, and we know from the past that Marvel does nothing unintentionally. So the word chaos I've only heard it one other time when it was describing the type of magic that Scarlet Witch uses.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, this got my gears turning, and I'm wondering if what they've just done is told us that the overall power that's happening within this Ahmet and the gods and all this stuff, if this is because we know there's no gods in Marvel, no real gods. Everything that has ever been referred to as a god, Thor, for instance, is truly a space alien or somebody like the Eternals.
Right. The Celestials are the only thing that would be close to being a god.
And so, with that in mind, and the fact that they said there's chaos in you, I'm wondering if Moon Knight gets his power from chaos magic. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really good point, because I had the same thought. I'm interpreting it two different ways. Either that's a subtle hint that, if you look at the suit, just kind of comes around his body. It seems very magical. So you have that element of it. But then I'm thinking it could mean chaos, and the fact that he can't judge him because it doesn't know which personality to judge. Like, it could be a case of Mark Spector has done a lot of bad and a lot of bad to come, and then Stephen Grant could have been a good person.
Yeah, he's just so innocent that,
God doesn't know how to judge because
he doesn't have it in him to fight or anything of that nature.
Right. So I don't know. I'm kind of leaning toward you have chaotic, like a chaotic mind.
Your brain is scrambled,
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of hope the magic element does, because that would broaden the magic element of the MCU.
Well, we know that the Disney Plus series are placeholders between MCU major releases, right? So what we're getting next is Doctor Strange.
I can't wait.
I can't wait either, man. And I think with the Spider-Man setup and, Loki and all this stuff that's happened previously, that Moon Knight is there to maybe dot some I's and cross some T's to set up what's going to happen with Doctor Strange. And we've from the trailers we've seen on Doctor Strange, it's going to be epic.
Huge. Now,
I hope so.
I keep hearing the phrase that it's not heavily connected to the MCU thrown around. So this could be kind of its own enclosed entity, potentially.
Well, this is a whole separate phase from like the Avengers and stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but in a more condensed thing. I bet it would. It's a door open to the more dark side, if you will, of MCU. So, like, you can introduce Blade with Moon Knight.
Right.
Because you could have, you have Egyptian monsters. You could have, Werewolf by Night.
True. True.
You can introduce all the supernatural, that's the word of element. This is a perfect doorway for that.
Well, that'll be interesting to see where they go with that, because, are they really going to introduce a whole new realm of possibilities to what creates superheroes through this character? And here's one that I really thought about a lot. Is what we saw happen real, or is this all happening in Steven's mind?
Glad you asked that, because the whole thing could be some delusion. Like, the whole suit could be fake. No, it's like every bit of it could be fake in some way. I'm really hoping it's not, but it makes you wonder.
Yeah, I was trying to wrap my head around the whole Steven's telling him this is real. You know, in the bathroom at the final fight with the whatever it's called, the Egyptian wolf or whatever, jackal. He tells Steven, and he appears to be separate from Steven in the mirrors, right? And he's like, "This is real. It's happening. And if you don't give me control of the body, then we're both, everybody's gonna die."
Well, right, but then like, not to speak anything ill, but like a schizophrenic, their
right
voices could say this is real, and it certainly isn't. So it could be something, on that level. I really don't know.
the way they ended that episode 2 with Moon Knight walking towards the camera after killing this jackal, that was probably one of the best endings we've seen thus far. At least it was the best introduction of the main character.
Exactly. It's the perfect build-up to seeing him in costume.
Well,
what do you think of the costume, by the way?
I think it's fitting with what we know about Moon Knight. It looks kind of like the mummy wrappings, which is Egyptian, and
it's also different from the comics. Like, he doesn't have the wrappings. Well, it's always been more like a white, sleek bodysuit.
Right.
But, it's growing on me. At first, I didn't really care for the mummy look, but it's definitely growing on me.
Yeah, it's kind of like the body part seemed like a mummy wrappings coming around him, but then the face and the hood and all that was very superhero,
And I like that his face is completely covered. It adds, like a mysterious element to it, even though we know who it is.
That brings up a good point on my whole chaos theory. We know that the MCU is well known, and Marvel's well known for using color to represent power, right? Well, if my theory is right and it's chaos magic is what? Red and purple, depending on
on who's using it.
Yeah, on who's using it. Well, his eyes were bright blue, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. They might have been white. They were very, very bright.
I want to say they're white.
And there was no red trails, no anything of that nature. So that might blow my theory out of the water, but it'll be interesting to find out.
So, what do you think, Khonshu? Is he a real Egyptian god? Is he an alien? What do you think?
So I think that's in the. I think Khonshu is one side versus Ahmet's side. Like, Khonshu's job is to make sure that Ahmet does not get released, right? And he's used Mark Spector to keep Ahmet contained.
Right.
And but he's not a very nice guy or being.
No,
but I think that, I mean, if my theory is right, I think they're all going to turn out to be some kind of, either from a different timeline or from outer space or something of that nature.
Yeah. If it's not, it's going to really open a can of worms.
Really? Yeah, I mean, because then you can go anywhere with it,
Yeah.
Well, so what do you give me your 5-second idea of where you think we're going next? Not literally 5 seconds, but
Yeah. I think we're going to see flashbacks of Mark unearthing Ahmet accidentally. I think that might be why he got his powers, to clean up his own mess.
gotcha.
So I think it'll go heavily into his origin.
Yeah, I think we get a whole lot more Mark Spector in the next episode.
Yeah.
Do they introduce or have cameos of any Marvel characters going forward?
Who would they use? I mean,
There's no telling where they go from there.
Yeah, I can't imagine they would. I'm gonna say no.
Okay, well, I'm going to take the opposite stance on that. I'm gonna say we're gonna get some cameos, just because that has been the modus operandus so far.
Right.
And
Any idea who that would be?
I have no clue, dude. Maybe Blade, like you said.
That would be awesome.
I have heard rumblings that Blade is going to make a comeback at some point.
Hey, they're definitely working on
This
it.
would be the time to do it.
In fact, we've already heard him in the movies. He was in the end credit scene of Eternals. We
Right.
heard his voice off. So he's there somewhere.
So that'll be interesting, but we're just going to have to wait and see, guys.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts before we close out?
I think we did everything big. I'm just super excited for episode 2. It is only 6 episodes, right?
It is 6 episodes. These are 40 minutes long, so it's a little better than we got it
Some of them are short.
for Scarlet Witch, or what was it, WandaVision, I should say. We only got 24-minute episodes off of that, so that they've extended it a little bit. I was pleasantly surprised at the length of this one, because they crammed a lot in it. We tried to do a 2-minute recap, but there was no way I could fit all that in 2 minutes.
No.
So,
and the amazing thing is, and they need all the kudos in the world, is how they kept it moving without it slowing down.
that it's
Like, I was literally on the edge of the couch, like leaning into the TV, because I was like, oh, we're moving along. What's going to happen next? And it did not.
yeah, I agree. Well, I'm pleasantly surprised at how good this first episode is. I just hope they can maintain this pace and the interest that it's constituted.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait until next Wednesday to see where they go next.
Yeah. I'm excited.
All right. Well, guys, we appreciate you coming by and joining us on this discussion. Drop a comment below on what your thoughts are. If you agree, disagree, you hate our face, whatever.
Tell us how wrong we are or how perfectly right we are.
But be sure that you hit the like and the subscribe button while you're at it too, because we need to get this thing going. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for coming by. I want to see you guys on the next video.